Do you remember those first weeks of the pandemic? I know you do. Nope. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was the late winter of 2020. I had come here to be with you on March the 1st, and then you gathered again on March the 8th. And then on Thursday of that week, somewhere around the 12th or so, everything shut down. It just shut down. It was so fast. And I remember them saying, well, you probably need to be inside for a couple of weeks or so. And I remember thinking, I can't be inside for a couple of weeks. I got things to do. But sure enough, we learned that what we thought was that the air was completely poisoned, that we were poison to each other, that we were unable to be in each other's presence. And it wasn't until we got the first vaccines and then the second vaccine that we began to be able to be comfortable in each other's presence. Here we are in this room without masks. Many of you, but I have not had COVID yet. So I know lots of people have, and I'm just kind of keeping it at bay. I remember the first time I went to Target, it was about 2 weeks into the pandemic, and I had a big respirator mask and goggles over my glasses. My husband had, sort of tricked it out, and heavy gloves. I thought I was going to pass out just going to get, do my grocery shopping. But it didn't take long for this congregation to pivot, to create a way to still be together. I remember thinking at the very beginning, wouldn't it be a shame? However, once we realized it was going to be a long time, wouldn't it be a shame if folks thought, well, that St. Croix UU fellowship, that was a thing I used to do. But we don't do that anymore. That was just a thing we used to do. And it would just drop off. But that didn't happen here. That did not happen. And I think our presence here now and our plans for the future and our desire to be a presence of progressive, religious belief, faith, philosophy, understanding here in the St. Croix Valley is as strong as it ever was. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. It's good to take a snapshot, to take the pulse of where we are now, what we were like before and where we are now and where we may think that we're going, especially as we emerge from COVID into whatever this new normal is, this endemic rather than pandemic. And we continue to live with the implications for our gathered community. Mary Oliver, the poet Mary Oliver, says that attention is the beginning of devotion. Attention is the beginning of devotion. I think we've begun that attention a long time ago here. Many of us are devoted to this congregation and its possibilities for life-changing messages in this community. And so that's what I want to explore a little bit today, the health of this congregation, what we know some of our challenges are, and then some future recommendations. So some of you may know that I've begun my doctoral studies at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. I'm in the inaugural cohort of the Learning Center for Social Justice, which was funded by a grant from the Lilly Endowment. 20 scholars of in various religious settings and traditions come together for 9 months to explore, discern, create, question assumptions, and propose new models for justice. And as a part of this program, we were invited to work with an organization called Convergence out of Atlanta. It's a group that supports the reshaping of organizations, congregations, nonprofits, and leaders driven by the values of inclusive, progressive, theological vision for a more just world for all. Convergence works primarily with Christian congregations and leaders. So engaging with us at SCOO has helped to broaden their knowledge and their understanding of what congregational life can look like from a non-Christian, progressive, ethical framework. So, and I'll just say parenthetically, I said 9 months in there. The doctoral work will go on a long time before that. So don't be expecting anything in 9 months out of that. Oh God, I hope not. So in the fall of 2020, last fall, we invited members and friends of SCOOP to complete the online survey. And some 26 of you did so. That is a great response. They wanted about 75% of the regular Sunday morning participation, and that's well over 100% of our Sunday morning average. So I was so pleased. Thank you for those of you who participated in that survey, both here and the folks online. It was members, it was friends, it was people who'd been around for a while, been around for 10 or more years, people who were brand new. You know, all of us were invited to participate. You answered demographic questions, how you feel about SCOOP now and compared to pre-pandemic times, what your hopes are for the future. And in addition, I filled out a leader survey to share information about our program offerings, staff particulars, financial help, with big help from Sarah Thompson. I couldn't have gotten that done without Sarah, and the like. Convergence took a look at our outward-facing communications, our website, our social media, and they educated themselves about Unitarian Universalism. They looked at local demographic information to learn about our neighborhood within a 10-mile radius, though we know that most of you come from more than a 10-mile radius, but that was the radius they looked at to say our neighborhood, right? This report will be shared with the steering committee and then with the whole congregation. We'll send it out in one of the newsletters. We'll do a link for that. And this coming week, we will have an all committee meeting. Gary is probably going to talk about that a little bit later. And the research director, Anna Hall from Convergence, will probably pop in and do about a 10-minute report on her recommendations. So that's just a little background on what this Convergence thing was, the scope of it. Were the cost for this survey and assessment not covered by my work at the Learning Center for Social Justice and its Lilly Endowment grant? Such an assessment would have cost SCOOP about $2,500. So I'm really grateful that we were able to do this. She did one for the larger congregation that I serve, First Unitarian Society. And when I began to see what those results were like, I said, we need this for SCOOP too. And she graciously agreed to do one for our congregation. And I think it's really important. Okay, so what did we learn? Well, we learned some things that we already know. I'm going to move papers around here just a moment. We learned some things that we already know. We learned that we're older, smarter, and whiter than many congregations, but not all. We learned that there were a great mix of people who've been here a long time and not so long, as I mentioned before. People have been attending in person and online since the pandemic started. Some of you, I think, haven't missed a Sunday. We don't take attendance. We could, but we're not the church police. You know, we don't take attendance. But I know that you have been committed to continuing the attention and intention of this congregation. We are among the 26 people who answered. 80% were between 66 and 80 years old. We are an older congregation. That's just who we are. We don't have, as members of our congregation right now, young families. We may someday, and that's a challenge for us. Of the respondents, some 40% live over 10 miles away, but some of you live really close. I'm looking at you, Marissa. I'm looking at you, Charlie. Some people live really close. So we're glad to draw from both the close area and further away. And I think of SCU as kind of having a catchment area. And that's beyond 10 miles. And we should think carefully about how we can continue to engage folks who live in that catchment area. Of the people who responded, 100% identify as white. In this area, it is predominantly, but not exclusively, white. And so we are whiter than our surrounding neighborhood. We can say that. Of the people who responded, most have some college. About 20%, about 40% have some graduate school or have completed graduate school. So we're fairly well educated. I think one of the challenges of this is how we continue to make welcome for people who have a different educational opportunity or experience or background, that there are many kinds of knowing, there are many kinds of intelligence, and degrees are not the only ones, of course. Of the people who responded, most were female, but not all, and most identify as heterosexual, but not all. We have a little bit broader diversity in terms of sexuality than some of the congregations in our neighborhood. So that's a strength for us, is that we understand ourselves as welcoming and affirming of all gender expressions and expressions of sexuality. Let's see, there's female, there's household income, goes all the way from the first category was 0 to about 25K. We had some folks in that category, and the highest category was 200K and up, and we had some folks in that category. So we really have a broad range of income and economic experience in our congregation. The predominant group was middle income between 25 and 75K. That's the main group. Now, this will be something that when I share this with you, I hope you'll take a little time with. Do you all know what a word cloud is? Are you familiar with a word cloud? I'm going to just hold this up. It's you answer a question with a word or phrase, and the more frequently that word or phrase shows up in the total number of answers, it becomes bigger in this word cloud. So when you get this report, you'll see these and you'll see what shows up. So I like this one. How did you become involved at SCU? The biggest one you can read there is friend. A friend invited you here or told you about it. Hooray. Hooray for friends. Hooray for new folks who are here today. We're really delighted to have you. Some of the other ways, you were invited, you went shopping for a congregation, you found us on the website, you looked up Unitarian Universalism, you heard about it, you met someone who was involved. Oh, look, there's cabin, coffee, maybe somebody over a coffee date. It was nearby. So, and word of mouth. So online, lots of ways that people hear about us. And this will be important information for our communications folks to see how folks are learning about and where we need to kind of increase that. What keeps you involved in this ministry? And the biggest one there is people. It's kind of nice. That's nice. I wasn't going to say it, but thanks for mentioning it. Community, fellowship, sense of purpose. There's individual interests. There's the word conservative in here. And I'm pretty sure that that shows up because we're in a fairly conservative area. And this is, I think, a sanctuary for progressive ideas, that we can say what we feel and be who we feel like we are here in this space. I think Marty's got a blurb here.
Well, it's a great ad.
Okay, sanctuary for progressive ideals as a tag line for Scoop. That could be good. Yeah. In 2 years, what do you hope you'll be able to say about this congregation? Well, community is very big here, but also that it's grown, that it's changed, that it's has its own home. That's a desire for us. Justice is a big one, that we're doing more justice work and making a change in our community. That we're really that we're doing some local work. So when you get these, really spend some time. I think the word clouds are pretty interesting. And then what do you see or sense could be holding you back as a congregation or ministry? The biggest word here is lack. That's lack of age diversity, lack of membership. We want to grow, money, building. COVID is a challenge that's holding us back. I've got Zoom on here, that Zoom may be something that's holding us back, but we can say it continues to keep people engaged who might not otherwise be able to be here. So there are some things that we've said that can give us some ideas for going forward. Again, I don't think that there's any great shocking pieces that come out of this, but it's good to have the photograph of where we are and what you've said right at this moment. So I'm not going to read every single page to you. I won't do that, but a few things that I want to lift up. Here are our congregational strengths. And this was agree or disagree. And over 90% of respondents agreed at least somewhat with these statements. That this is like a close-knit family. That can be a positive and a negative. We can come back to that. Right? It's the family we choose, but it's hard to break into a family, right? If you're a newcomer, it's a little hard to break into a family. So we want to be mindful of being an open family. Is spiritually vital and alive, holds strong beliefs and values, builds relationships among its members, has worship that makes us think, is welcoming to people of all races, sexualities, and genders, is welcoming and accessible to those with disabilities, invites all members into decision-making, and embraces change. Now, if we just stop right there, we could say that's pretty darn healthy. That's really something that we can be proud of. And I'm a big one for appreciative inquiry. However, we do say that we disagree with these statements. That we are not a source of learning for children and youth because they're not here, right? That we don't always successfully engage people of all ages. We're fairly narrow on the demographic band, not completely, but a little bit. And this one, supports members in developing spiritual practices. I think that's because we don't do a lot of Bible study, but that's okay. That's a little sotto voce hallelujah back there. So About 81% of respondents are excited about where our congregation is headed, but over 60% don't believe that we're working hard enough to change the community, that we're not working enough as a congregation outside our walls. And I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. And we're not working with other organizations in the community. So that's something to pay attention to as we seek to increase our reach. Just move here. Okay, so there was a fair section about this, about what else are you doing? So we know that the only thing you do in terms of exercising your progressive values is not here at Scoop on 3 Sundays of the month and various committee meetings that you go to. Hooray. So what are the kinds of organizations that you supported during your volunteering in 2021? All right, so it was a pandemic year, it was a little different, but you did a lot of volunteering. So these are local, political party comes up. There's River, and over here I see Wild, so I knew that was the Wild River group, right? Knew that it was in there. Audubon, the Trail, music, animals, St. Croix area, food, different things. So you're doing a lot out in the community. We are not doing something as an organization, this organization, changing the face of the community, but you are changing the face of the community, right? Because you're out there. You volunteered almost 7,200 hours, 7,200 hours in the community with organizations not connected to Scoop as well. So actually almost 10,000 hours with a combination here. You sent emails, phone calls, faxes, letters to elected officials, and you volunteered almost 3,700 hours to this congregation in committee meetings and so on. So, I mean, we're doing a lot. So let it be known that there are other things that we can do here, putting our values out in the world. But sometimes what we do is fill your buckets so you can go out in the world and do that, right? I think that's really important to note, that we are not only, or could we be organizing here to go out in the world, but we are about filling your bucket, and you fill others' buckets here and provide inspiration, sustenance, comfort, inspiration to go out into the world. How often did you do Bible study? Not at all. That was that one. I don't know. Here's how we would describe the congregation's financial health, both before and after pandemic. Tight, but we manage. That's what we say. We're tight, but we manage. At no point are we noting that we're in serious financial difficulty. And I want to give big kudos to both Sarah and to Bruce for your work in helping us clean up our financial practices, our budgeting practice, and getting some clarity around our pledges and all of that. So I really am so grateful to the two of you for the work you've done for our financial health. So I'm going to go a whole lot further into all of these. There are some questions about conflict in the congregation. Have we had conflict during the past couple of years? And I'm pretty sure that what we all meant when we filled that out was about the possible move to a new building, which, as we know, didn't happen. But there's some good data in here about how we worked it out, how we came together and worked it out. I think one of the recommendations that they will have for us is doing some healthy engagement with conflict training. such things are available, and I think they will suggest that we do that. I think the fact that we've remained pretty stable and healthy over that tension, unstable moment, and then we've come back to stability is a really good thing about that. I want to just say a few words about the local demographics, and then I'm going to suggest what I think may be the recommendations. We don't have those yet, and I expect that I'll get them this week. This area, this 10-mile area that they looked at, is growing slowly. It's about 29,000 people within the area that they surveyed. The fastest growing group is 65 and older, and the average age is increasing over time. Population is 96% white, primarily middle income. Although there is a great disparity between white households and households of color, not surprising to know. The population is more educated than the state as a whole, but less educated than our congregation lists to be. I think, I think Wisconsin. I think they looked at Wisconsin, though I don't think they just went 10 miles that way. I don't know. I'll have to ask that. So here was an interesting stat. This was the piece that I found a little bit takeaway for me. While younger families are likely to be more conservative, younger families are likely to be more conservative. Your neighbors that are older are more likely to share some of your progressive values. So we've said over and over that we want to reach out to younger families, are very eager to have young families here. And that remains true. And I don't think all of them are not interested in our message. I think part of it is outreach, and part of it is how do you get up and get the family together on Sunday morning? You know, who's going off to play hockey and whatever they're doing. But it's a little bit of a harder reach for younger families because demographically they skew more conservative. So that was interesting to me. There's a whole article on the front page of the Strib this morning about young families moving to the far suburbs, and they were talking about Lake Elmo, which is, what is that, 30 miles down the road or maybe more. But I don't think that even Chisago City, would it be counted as a far suburb? Very, very far, right? So anyway, that was interesting to me. And here's this, 60% of local residents are not involved in a religious congregation. 60% not involved in a religious congregation, right? So the largest segment in this 10-mile radius, the largest segment of folks there identifies as Catholic. The second largest identifies as no religious preference. And the third. So I think this is really interesting that we are not fighting other denominations so much as not church, right? The reasons that people don't participate are they don't feel welcome. It's a very strong reason. Well, they haven't met us yet. They don't believe in God. Well, they haven't met us yet. Or they no longer believe, right? So those are some ways we are doing congregational life in a very different way. And I think those are some important takeaways. So, okay, so what does it all mean? I titled this Love the One You're With. I know I'm not crazy about the song, but I like the title. Because we're here. We are with each other. We have either been here for quite a long time or it's our first time. But something made us walk through the door. And attention is the beginning of devotion. There is something to love here. And I think it's each other. I know it's each other. The close connection that we have with each other and the feeling like how empty our lives would be if we were not able to come and get our buckets filled, to be fully ourselves, to be our progressive selves, in this space to work out an idea. What do we mean by this? Let's work it out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have a better idea than I do. Let's figure that out together. Let's get in and wrestle with it. Let's pay attention to each other, to the health of our congregation, to what change we might make in this community, to what change we're already making. Look at us. It's changing in our community because we show up here today. It changes your lives, changes my life, changes your lives, because we have a place to go and share these ideas. And honest to Pete, if we didn't believe that love was stronger than all the other pain, oppression, grief, trouble, ignorance, meanness, it wouldn't be worth coming. But I think we love who we are with and the way we express this, and it is worth it. I'm eager to see what our recommendations will be, and I'll follow up with you about that. But for now, thank you for filling out the survey, and we'll close our recording and have a little conversation.